Well, everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the Nintendo DSi and see how this particular console holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will definitely tell you about the DSi was that this was probably one of the biggest differences from one particular gaming console to another from Nintendo's portable lineup. This was an insane generation of, devices, and I do think this in a lot of ways kind of stemmed, I guess it was like a combination from the DS and mobile gaming at that time. Because for the most part, this was the first Nintendo console that you could actually use and not really just be stuck with the games that you were buying. But there was a lot of stuff you could do with this console even before downloading or playing a certain game on this particular console. So this in and of itself was another very, very big thing. And we'll talk about that throughout this whole entire video. But when I actually bought the DSi, it wasn't until many, many, many years later from when I bought the DS Lite. I think I bought a DSi in 2017 or 2018. And I do think for the most part, when I looked at this particular console, I didn't think it was that big of a difference from at least the viewpoint of the physical aspect of it. But it wasn't until I actually turned this thing on that I start noticing massive differences. So this thing was a direct successor to the DS Lite, and there were so many features that came within it. On the front side of this particular console, they did kind of change away from the glossy look to this matte look, but they did add a camera to this particular device. So this in and of itself was a pretty crazy thing that they ended up doing here, because they really didn't have to do it, but they ended up bringing in that particular camera system, which I think was actually a really, really nice touch. On top of that, they, once you open this thing, that's when you're getting these displays. Now, I do think these displays were really, really nice. You were still getting that top display and a bottom display, and for a portable console, it really wasn't that bad. You were getting these new LED indicator lights, which were nice. You're getting this new power button on the front side of this particular console too, which was very interesting. Speakers and everything around the same spot. The charging port was the same. The volume indicator and stuff was still there. However, an interesting thing that they actually ended up doing was that they removed the Game Boy Advance card slot. So you were no longer able to go through and basically, plug in a Game Boy Advance game inside of this thing anymore. You essentially had to go through and basically, either download those games via their Nintendo eShop or the DSiWare shop, or just not play those games anymore or buy a DS Lite or original DS to play them. So that was somewhat of a sad thing that was going on at that time. Again, not the biggest deal in the world, but that was one pretty big thing that was going on at that time that you may have to keep in mind at the back of your head. Beyond that though, not the biggest deal in the world, but that was one thing that I noticed at that time. So on the exterior, I still think it looks beautiful, and for a gaming console that came out in 2008, this thing in a lot of ways still looks very, very beautiful. My favorite thing though, and the biggest change that happened, was the software. They went from basically a Java phone to an iOS operating system. That's the difference between the DS Lite and the DSi. The DSi brought this kind of interface. I guess it was supposed to be kind of like what the Wii was going for at that time, but it was a beautiful interface. They had a shop now. Just to give you perspective, the DS Lite, all you could do was do PictoChat and DS download play. Those were the two main things you could do besides playing a game on your particular DS, and almost all those things you had to move somewhere and download a game from Walmart or something, or you had to go into PictoChat and play that game somewhere else too, or chat with people. The DSi, as long as you had a Wi-Fi connection, you could do a lot of stuff. In fact, there are some things about the DSi you don't have built in natively inside of the Nintendo Switch, like a web browser. You actually had a dedicated web browser inside of the Nintendo DSi, which was crazy. And it's still so cool that we have that on the DSi, because the Nintendo Switch still doesn't have it. You still have basically the Nintendo DSiWare shop, which allows you to go ahead and basically download games from the DSi shop. Some were free, but you could store them inside of your SD card or inside of your memory, and that was another amazing thing that you had. That in and of itself was another super cool thing, because you could just go ahead and play these games on the go, and you can still have a dedicated gaming console right there, which again was such a cool thing to have. It's easily one of my most favorite things that was going on with that particular console during that moment as well. On top of that, you were still getting an SD card slot inside of this console, which wasn't there inside of the Nintendo DS Lite. The DS Lite, there wasn't really anything you could do on it because it was just it was just a console. Just you plug in the game and that's it. The DSi, there were just so many things to do that they gave you the capability of, installing an SD card inside of this console, which again was just another beautiful thing that we had the capability of doing inside of the DSi. On top of that, with the DSi itself, you were still getting a lot of other good stuff that we could have seen before, but I will tell you from the software side, there was a lot of things to basically be in love with inside the DSi. Nintendo also gave us a lot of cool stuff when it came down to the games. Now, for the most part, a lot of games that came out for the DSi, almost every single one, was compatible inside of the DS Lite, and with the DSi, although it wasn't backwards compatible with the Game Boy Advance games, it was still backwards compatible with all those Nintendo DS Lite games and the original DS games that you could play before. So that was another very cool thing that was going on for this particular console as well. Now, we did have the DSi XL that came out for this console, the bigger version of this console as well, which I'll make a separate video about. But the DSi, I will tell you, really kind of stood the test of time. And when I go ahead and open up my DS Lite and I open up my DSi, there are massive differences between these two consoles. I think Nintendo did an amazing job with the Nintendo DSi, and I still think in a lot of ways it's still worth buying. I think it's worth kind of seeing yourself like how good of a job Nintendo did back in 2008, and they still sold like tens of millions of units of this thing. Like there was a lot to love about this particular console. Although it wasn't perfect, like I feel like the battery life could have been a little bit better, I still think this was a very good console, and I think Nintendo did a really good job with it for sure. So in terms of that, that's kind of how the Nintendo DSi holds up in 2024. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.